The Vikings game just ended. What'd you think? Let's hear it. It's Vikings Ventline. Call us at 651-646-8255 or tweet us at ScoreNorth. Vent. This is Vikings Ventline.
Second down and 6. Haskins too high and now picked. McLaurin was wide open, but Anthony Harris gets the interception.
All right, welcome to Vikings Ventline. I'm Phil Mackey. That's Manny Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers are 651-646-8255 if you want to chime in here on this Thursday night. And thank you to the Vikings in Washington for being very efficient tonight, Manny.
Yes.
Hill. It's a very snappy 2-hour and 45-minute contest tonight.
Lots of runs. Clock was moving.
Yeah, I think they were taking commercial breaks, trying to cram them all in because they didn't have enough breaks during the fourth quarter. But it's a Vikings win and plenty of things to talk about in this one. And we'll take your questions and comments via phone and at Score North on Twitter. Again, 651-646-8255. And I guess you told me right before we took the mics, I need a mini rant before we take phone calls. We'll get to Sam and DC in a second, but the floor is yours. Go
ahead. I'm just going to say this. Kirk Cousins played very well tonight. He was 23 out of 26, 285 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown. That's fine. Didn't throw a pick. That's fine. The Washington football team is 1-6. Well, they're now 1-7 after tonight. They're a bad football team. Kirk Cousins played well. I'm not gonna turn into Denny Green here where I'm gonna crown Kirk Cousins like the MVP of the league and the greatest quarterback we have ever seen. Because
are you ripping Kirk Cousins to start the show?
I'm not ripping. He played very well tonight, but apparently because I'm not anointing him like the greatest quarterback performance that I've ever seen tonight, that I'm not giving him enough credit or what. He played well tonight against a bad football team. It's good. It's good that he didn't perform poorly, but Washington, they're 1-7.
Okay, but
one of the worst teams in the league. But he played very well.
Yeah, he did.
He should have.
Are
he
people
did what
chirping
he
you
was
on
supposed
Twitter or something? Is that what you're?
It's like I'm getting these questions like, well, Kirk played very well tonight. Yeah, yes, he did. Yes, he did what he was supposed to do. He played well against a bad team. That's nothing we have not seen before with Kirk Cousins.
Well, but one thing that we haven't seen a lot of is Kirk Cousins playing really well and winning in primetime. So again, it's Washington, and they're terrible. They have one win.
That's the thing, though. That it's Washington, and there was a lot made about how he was going to perform against his former team and all of that. But Washington is just awful. They're just bad. And I give Kirk credit. He played very well tonight. He was under duress. The offensive line did not look great tonight in protection. We can get to Pat Elflein a little bit here too. But I mean, let's just chill here for a minute. Kirk is being paid handsomely. He's a good quarterback. He's played very well for about a month now. But we give him credit, but let's not get out of control here with how much credit we give him tonight for how he performed against a bad team. He was very good tonight. He did what he needed to do.
There's boxes to be checked. Tonight was one of the boxes. I think the primetime boxes need to be checked, and he checked one tonight. I think the road games against good teams that are going to be coming up on the schedule, starting with Kansas City and then Dallas and then later on Seattle.
Stuff I'm looking for.
Those are going to be big games for Kirk, but these last 4 games, he's done exactly what he should do. I think offensively, they've mostly schemed the way that they should. The offensive line was pretty rickety at times. This is one of Pat Elflein's worst games in terms of penalties.
He was bad tonight.
At one point, he got forklifted into Kirk Cousins. So there were some good and some bad, but for the most part, the Vikings these Thursday night games are weird, and guys are still nursing major injuries and bruises from the Sunday game just a few days earlier. Mm-hmm. There's very little practice, so they get wonky. Just win the game. They did 19-9. I'm Phil Mackey. That's Manny Hill, 651-646-8255. Sam and DC, you're first out of the gate here on Vikings Ventline.
Thanks for taking my call, guys. So, agree with everything you were saying in the intro. I think this was a really bad game for Pat Elflein. At the end there, Alexander Madison probably had 50 yards called back on holding calls and bad penalties. I think they probably could have scored a couple more touchdowns. that were just called back with these drive-killing penalties. So it's frustrating, but he's probably the weakest link on our offensive line, and that's just something you have to deal with. Yeah, I will say on Kirk, and it's tough to see just watching on TV, but it feels like he was hanging on for the ball for a bit longer to make a bigger play happen, whether it's because he's testing out these, second string, third string DBs, or it's his ex team and he wants to, put up some yards on them. It just felt like he was holding on for a big play that sometimes it developed. He had a couple of huge throws to Diggs that were really great, but it seems like he was just wanting for a bit more. Like it's what you said. It's like it's a short week. You can't do your full install or whatever, and you have injuries. And a win is a win, and you take it and you move on. So thanks for taking my call, and I'll listen.
Yeah, thank you, Sam in DC. And I think I'll say this: the Vikings are favored by 16 or 17 points, depending on the sports book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's going to be some reaction out there that says, man, that was just kind of an ugly game. It was 19-9, although the Vikings didn't punt. And we can talk about the 4th and 1 that they went for on their own 35-yard line at some point here. But, the NFL, even the worst teams, the Dolphins, Washington, they're still NFL teams.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have capable players. And, for all the talk about Adrian Peterson being washed up, okay, there's a difference between Adrian Peterson 10 years ago and washed up. There's a huge, washed up to me is you're garbage, 2 yards a carry, you can't hack it anymore. And then 10 years ago, Adrian Peterson is maybe the greatest pure running back in the history of the NFL. He's on a Mount Rushmore with Jim Brown and Walter Payton, et cetera, right?
Sure.
Okay, he's neither of those things, but he's somewhere in between. I mean, he averaged 5 yards a carry tonight, 5.5 yards a carry. He looked fine. All I'm saying is, if anyone's out there thinking, oh man, you should have blown out the Redskins and anything. I know Rami said on our show earlier today, it's a failure if you don't blow out the Redskins. Well, I think these Thursday night games are just different. Just win the game, get to 6-2.
They're tricky.
And then take your 10 days of prep for potentially Pat Mahomes coming back and you going to Kansas City and playing one of the best teams in the NFL. So I think my major takeaway, Manny, from this, on the positive side anyways, was that Dalvin Cook continues to be the best running back in the NFL. He is the thing that sets up almost everything else on offense. And that's not to take away from Kirk Cousins, who only had 3 incompletions tonight. Stephon Diggs had another massive game. He broke Randy Moss's 3-game yardage record. It's the most yards ever gained by a Vikings wide receiver over a 3-game stretch in the history of the franchise. But I think a lot of this stuff gets set up because defenses know that Dalvin Cook, whether it's out of the backfield catching passes, and he caught 5 of them for 73 yards tonight, or whether it's in the zone blocking scheme they have in the running game, 23 carries for 98 yards, he's amazing. And you have to account for him. And I think he opens up so many things in the passing game. And it just solidified it again tonight. There's not a running back in the NFL that I wouldn't take over Dalvin Cook.
Teams are scared of him. They are scared of the game-breaking potential that he has every time he is given the football. They are scared of if Kirk Cousins dumps it off to him on a running back pass play, on screens, things like that. Teams are focusing in on him, and much like in a way, Phil, much like teams would focus in on Adrian Peterson when he was at the height of his career here. The huge difference is Kirk Cousins is a competent quarterback, and you have really good weapons on the outside with Diggs, and Thielen didn't play tonight, but obviously Adam Thielen is very good. And, Irv Smith, we finally got a chance to see Irv Smith a little bit in the second half of the game tonight. That's been the difference, is that teams are keying in on Dalvin Cook, trying to shut him down. And Kirk Cousins, for the last 4 games now, has been able to take advantage of that. And that's good. That is a sign of an offense that is on the right page right now. The only nitpicky thing tonight is, the offensive line had a very, very, very sketchy night tonight, particularly Pat Elflein. But, this was a pretty solid performance from the offense, aside from some of the things we saw from the offensive line. And Kirk Cousins played well tonight. I'm not surprised by that because, forget about the prime time thing. It was against a bad team, and Kirk Cousins has done this against bad teams before. I'm not surprised by it. Played very well. He deserves credit for that. Dalvin Cook deserves credit for what he did today. Stephon Diggs was terrific. This was a pretty solid win tonight. It wasn't pretty from start to finish, but they got out of here with a win, and you give them credit for that for sure.
It also feels like they went in schematically offensively and said, all right, this is going to be kind of a boring milquetoast game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly going to throw short passes, screens, and run the football. Just off the top of my head, the only real deep pass I can remember was the third down pass down the sidelines to Stephon Diggs, just that drop in the bucket dime that Kirk Cousins threw.
Beautiful throw.
30, 35 yards down the field. And outside of that, I think the Vikings wisely knew going in, short week, tough to have a full game plan. It's a weak opponent. Just lean on them. Let's avoid turnovers. And Stephon Diggs has a fumbling problem this season, and he has to work on that. It was his fourth fumble, but let's hand the ball off, lean on him with the offensive line, and let's throw some short passes to Stephon Diggs and get a couple tight ends in the mix and make sure Dalvin Cook gets the ball in the air 5 or 6 times, and that was it. So 651-646-8255. Go back to the Vikings Ventlines here. Eric and Bismarck, you're on the show.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's going on, man?
What's up?
Hey, Manny hit the nail on the head. I think there are so many positive things to take from tonight's win, even though it wasn't the prettiest. I'm just curious, you guys' take on this, though. Where does merit play into starting positions for Xavier Rhodes and Pat Elflein? I mean, you have to convince me, especially in the case of Pat Elflein, would his replacement potentially play worse than Pat Elflein? And I'm talking about Dakota Dozier or possibly Brett Jones, who I know in preseason was one of the top-ranked centers in Pro Football Focus. But you have to convince me at some point, if Pat Elflein keeps playing the way he does, that his replacement can't possibly do better than him. I mean, as a team, we should be focusing on wins, and we should be focusing on a deep playoff push. If we're stubborn and say, hey, we drafted Pat Elflein in the first or second round, we've got to stick with him, he'll shake it off eventually. You at some point you have to look at the merit of what the person's producing and make a decision based on that. Again, positive win. It's tough to be negative at a point like this, but when we start playing tougher teams, we need better than Pat Elflein's performance tonight. We just do.
Yeah, Eric and Bismarck, thank you for the phone call. So he's asking about Pat Elflein, Manny, and Xavier Rhodes. And, I mean, Elflein looked like he was going to cry in the fourth quarter of that game. Like,
he was
penalties. And Xavier Rhodes, I don't think it's an overreaction to say that the Vikings for sure have 3 better cornerbacks on their team right now than Xavier Rhodes. That Xavier Rhodes is only starting based on previous performance 2 or 3 years ago. He's getting picked on now, too. Think about this, man. Washington, one of the worst teams in the NFL, came into your house in primetime with Case Keenum and said, Xavier Rhodes is the dude we're going to pick on for the entire first half. Who would have thought that 2 or 3 years ago?
It's really
here we are.
It's really unbelievable. Xavier last year had a tough year last year. I think he was rated as like the 70th best corner by PFF last year, I think. And I think last year we kind of looked at it as, okay, well, he was dealing with some injuries and, it was just sort of a tough year for him physically. But if he comes back in 2019 healthy, then, and we had Zimmer in the offseason talking with media saying, Xavier's got to play better and I'm going to make sure he plays better. And we just haven't seen it. And I mean, at this point, it's like 2 straight years of him just not playing at the level that he was playing in 2017 when he was one of the best cover corners in the NFL. I don't know if I don't think he's ever going to be able to get back to that in 2017. And if he's not, then considering how much he's making, considering how much his salary is counting against the cap, and the fact that you've got other guys. You've got Mike Hughes, who's starting to get back into the groove of things. I think they're going to get Holton Hill back next week because he had two 4-game suspensions, I guess. Now, how much you can really trust him and rely on him, that remains to be seen.
I think he's going for the cycle. I think there's another suspension category that he can probably get here.
Probably. But the main point is that, they've got